Hey everyone, my name is Iasmina and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is one that I've been looking forward to pretty much the entire year to make, and that is a roundup of the best books that I read in 2019. And to make it a little bit more interesting, I decided to do a top 10, so counting down my favorite books of the year from number 10 all the way down to number 1. And also a few honorable mentions. So before we get into it, I just want to mention that honestly I think this year wasn't one of the best reading years. For me, I didn't get to read a lot of the books that I was really excited about and I really wanted to read. I just did not get to them for various reasons. It hasn't in general been a great year for me, but hopefully I can get to those books next year. That being said, I did read quite a lot of books and I'm almost done with my reading goal. I still have like 3 books left before I reach 40 books this year. But for now, these are the best books I've read in 2019. Okay, I want to start off with a few honorable mentions before we get into the top 10. So honorable mention number 1 is Queens of Geek by Jen Wilde. This is a YA contemporary novel that I've talked about quite a few times on my channel already. I love this. It was very quick to read, very enjoyable. It's about 3 friends who go to a convention in California, sort of like a Comic-Con convention, and one of them is a YouTuber. She has a meet and greet there, and her 2 best friends are just general nerds and they have the time of their lives at this convention. And it also deals with anxiety representation and LGBTQ, and just in general it was fantastic, so it had to go on my list as an honorable mention. And the last honorable mention I want to mention is one that I read recently, and that is Snapshot by Brandon Sanderson. This is a detective / science fiction novella that I read recently and I really enjoyed. I didn't really know what to expect from it, but as I started reading it, I finished it in one sitting. There's an interesting thing that happens at the end and it caught me by surprise, and it was just a very enjoyable read and just a very representative novella of Sanderson's. His way of thinking and the way he builds magic systems is fantastic, and I think this is also a pretty good example. Even though it's a more science fiction type story, it is still very good. Okay, and that is it for the honorable mentions, and now let's get to the top 10. So, coming in at number 10 is another YA contemporary that I read this year, and that is Lola and the Boy Next Door by Stephanie Perkins. This was everything that I wanted from this type of book. It's a very quirky and funny and obviously romantic and cute story about Lola and the boy next door. Basically, Lola is this quirky character who loves to dress up, put on wigs and dressed up in quirky costumes, and that's just how she likes to express herself. She used to live next door to the Bell twins, a boy and a girl, who had since moved away, and she was very happy that they no longer lived there because she had a massive crush on the Bell twin. However, at the start of the book, the Bell twins move back next door and things unveil. It was sweet, it was funny, I really felt for the characters and I really felt for the connection and the romance between them, and as far as YA contemporary romance, I would highly recommend this one. Coming in at number 9 is a novella, and it is the 4th part of a series of novellas that I read earlier this year and that I loved, and that is In an Absent Dream by Shannon Maguire. It's a great addition to the story, and I obviously don't want to go into too many spoilers if you haven't read the series, but I keep recommending it, so I do hope you get to it eventually if it sounds like something that might interest you. But the whole series is about what happens when children fall into magical universes and what happens when they find their way back into the real world after experiencing all of the magical things, good and bad. Next on the list is an audiobook that I read recently, and that is This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. Again, this was a very unexpected hit for me. So this is about Adam Kay, who used to be a doctor, a surgeon, a general practitioner at a hospital. He is now a comedian, so he left the hospital after, I think he said 5 years, I can't remember exactly, of being a practicing doctor, and then he turned into a writer and a comedian, and this is his account and his recollections of those times when he was a practicing doctor in the NHS, so in the British health system. These entries are so funny and I laughed aloud so many times. It was very funny, very insightful read into what it takes to be a doctor and how exhausting it can be, but also how rewarding, and all of the funny little tidbits of his day-to-day life. as a doctor, so I would highly recommend this nonfiction read from Adam Kay. Then at number 7, I have another nonfiction read. There's quite a few on this list. This is The Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Bithell. So as the title suggests, and I guess similarly to This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay, this is a bookseller's daily account of what it takes to be a bookseller. And this guy, Sean Bithell, is an actual bookseller, so it is his autobiography, I guess. And he owns a little bookshop in a small town in Scotland. And he just accounts sort of funny tales of, you know, day-to-day activities in a bookstore and all of the quirky and weird characters that come in and out, and, you know, just sort of what his life looks like and how he sees life through the eyes of, well, a bookseller. And obviously, as someone who loves books, this was very, very good and very insightful, and again, very, very funny. The number 6 spot goes to another YA contemporary, and that is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. This year, I also discovered Alice Oseman and how much I love her books and her writing, and this is the second book that I read from her, and I completely fell in love with her writing and her voice. I find it hard to know how to explain this book properly. I think it's one of those that you just have to sort of pick up and experience for yourself. In a nutshell, it deals with this character called Frances, who is a bit shy, is a bit of a wallflower, doesn't really have friends, but she's really, really into this podcast slash YouTube series called University. And the author of University, or the person who puts on these podcasts, is called Radio Silence. So they're sort of anonymous and they don't show their face, they just obviously record their voice, and it's pretty much like a fiction story that Frances listens to and she's a massive fan of, and she really wants to know who Radio Silence is, and she wants to find out, you know, how she can take a more active part in this podcast, because it's pretty much the only thing that she really cares so much about. It's a really beautifully written book, and it deals with a lot of important topics like identity and diversity and what it means to choose what you really want to do in life and not let others choose for you. Halfway through the list, at number 5, I have a literary fiction novel. I think it falls into the literary fiction category. This is The Unseen World by Liz Moore. This book is about Ada and her father. Ada is a 12-year-old girl who is homeschooled and who has grown up with her father, who is a famous computer scientist, and he works in a science lab. Her father is working on the AI software program. So think of it more like a AI chatbot, but it's the basis of something more advanced and important than that. But in the current state of it, it's being used as a chatbot program that is trying to learn how to talk like a human. Ada's father is her entire world. She does not have anyone else in this world, and everything she does relates to him. And then in the beginning of the book, Ada's father is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and slowly at first and then more progressively it starts to get really bad, and it pretty much shatters Ada's entire world. And sort of the story of what happens between the two and what happens to Ada and to a cryptic floppy disk that her father leaves to her before he falls into the depths of the Alzheimer's disease, and her attempts at trying to decode what that information is. At number 4, I have a fantasy novel, and that is Give the Dark My Love by Beth Revis. Again, this was a very unexpected hit for me. I wasn't sure what I was sort of going into, but I had heard great things and I love this. I was so surprised. This was so dark and awesome and wonderful, and I've talked about this again obviously on my channel, but I really recommend this book. It's very different, I think, from a lot of YA fantasies that I've read recently, and I really liked it. It was really dark. And I think that's sort of the thing that I don't see that often in YA. So this is a story about Nedra, who lives in a world where a mysterious disease has started to slowly eat up this world, and it's pretty much the plague, okay? The people don't think it's a real thing. The rich think, oh, it's just the disease of the poor and it'll never touch them. But Nedra has seen this disease take some of her close friends and family, and she is on a mission to tackle this, and she goes to a university to study medicinal alchemy, and slowly she gets into the more dangerous dark arts. I'll just say necromancy, because honestly it is in the description of the book, so I'm not going to spoil anything more than that. But it's great. It's very dark. Really loved it, and I really want to continue on with the series because I think it's going to be a trilogy, hopefully. And number 3 is a book that has stayed with me since I've read it, and I think will stay with me for a very, very long time. I still think about this book. And that is Nothing to Envy: Real Lives in North Korea by Barbara Demick. So Barbara Demick is a journalist, and she wrote this book by interviewing escapees from North Korea, most of them now living in South Korea, and sort of recounting their lives and how they escaped North Korea and how their lives were during the worst times of North Korea in the 90s mostly. The way this is presented and written is very unbiased because she just accounts the stories of the people that she interviews, and I feel like it paints a more realistic picture than some other books I've read about North Korea. If a book really makes me feel so hard and still sticks with me like months, almost a year. This was one of the first books I've read this year, and it has since stuck with me, and I think it's just one of these books that will stick with me my entire life, and I would like to reread it, but it is pretty harrowing at times. So if you're interested in the topic, I think I haven't read that many books on North Korea, but this is the best one I've read, and I would so highly recommend this. Okay, we're almost there. My number 2 favorite book of the year is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. Again, I have raved about this book before and I will continue to do so. I love this so much. This just had so many elements of things that I really love, just all in one book. Truly Devious is about Stevie, who is a very interesting and clever girl who is really into sort of detective stories and crime stories, and she really wants to crack the mystery, right? And she goes to this new school that has a pretty dark past of some mysteries that were left unsolved. And Stevie is very excited to go to the school, but it's mostly because she really wants to solve the mystery of the crime that happened there many years in the past. And you sort of get a split timeline of Stevie in the present and then a bit of what happened in the past as we slowly go through the story and put the puzzle pieces together, and obviously Stevie tries to solve the mystery. Like, all of that is great, but what I really liked about this book was A, the character. Stevie is a fantastic character, and B, the writing. This was so well done, so well written. There were so many things that I actually tabbed things. I never do this. I told you guys, I almost never do this, but I tabbed some things because they just stuck with me, and I read this paragraph or 3 paragraphs and I was just like, oh my god, I want to reread that. That was amazing. I really recommend this. It's really good. Okay, and we are finally here at number 1. The best book I read this year, my favorite book that I've read the entire year. Number 1 spot on my list goes to, I think, one of the first books that I've read in the beginning of the year. This is a theme throughout this video. I think most of my favorite books I've read either at the very beginning of the year or at the very end. The middle was not a great time for me, so I think that really reflects in my writing and the type of books I read and where my favorites were. So this is one that I read in January of this year, and it made it to number 1. I love this book. It's amazing. That is The Serpent King by Jeff Sentner. This is one of these books, like Nothing to Envy, although, well, very differently. This is a YA contemporary. That was nonfiction about North Korea. Similarly to that, this is a book that stuck with me throughout the year after I read it, and it will continue to stick with me, I think. I felt for these characters so much. This follows the stories of 3 best friends from a small town in America, and their sort of final year in high school and trying to figure out, what to do with their lives, and it's a coming of age story, as is very common in this genre, but this was done so well. I felt for these characters so much. There's a part that I'm not gonna spoil, but there is a part in this book that broke my heart. I don't normally get like this about books. I don't get overly emotional. I usually just get like excited and really passionate, but not emotional. But there is a part that broke me. It broke me and it sticks with me, and I love this book. I don't want to say too much about it because I didn't know much going into it, and I think that was the part of why I enjoyed it so much, because I didn't know what to expect, and I was very pleasantly surprised. I think there will always be a piece of this book in my heart. That's how much I love this, and that's why I'll recommend this book. If you really want a story that touches your heart, but that can also make you laugh at times and just make you question humanity and other things. Yeah, The Serpent King. Okay, so there you have it. These are my favorite books of 2019, or at least the ones that I can grasp. because the other ones are not physical. That's the word. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the sort of videos I put out. And yeah, I'm really hoping that 2020 will be the year that I read more books. And not just small books, maybe quality over quantity, I would say, because like I said, this year wasn't one of my most successful years in general, but also reading wise, so I'm really trying to make next year much better. Anyway, do let me know what was your favorite book of the year, or some of your favorite books that you've read this year, or obviously do let me know if you've read any of my top 10 of the year, or if you're planning on reading any of them. Yeah, I would really love to know, but I'm very, very curious to know what was your guys' favorite book of the year. So please leave a comment down below and let's chat about books. Otherwise, that was it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching and being with me through this year and the ones before. And here's to another successful year on this platform and to reading and to everything. Yeah, that's it for today, guys. See you in the next video. Bye!